Good morning, all. Some of you I have not met, but I am Chris Scott, and what I'm going to do is just do a quick roll call to see who's on, so that way the senator can see everybody. We'll start with Judge Susan Ashley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Senator Shaheen. Thank you.
Morning.
Heather Culp.
Hi, Heather.
Judge Yazinski.
Hello, good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Joseph Ribsam.
Hi, good morning, Senator. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning. Do you go by Joe or Joseph?
Joe is great, thank you.
Okay.
Mark Rosella from CASA. Oh, mute. Okay. All right.
Hi, Mark. You're muted.
Good morning, Senator Shaheen. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Dr. Erin Barnett.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
It's just Erin. Good morning.
Good morning.
Sarah Blodgett.
Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
It's Stephanie Slayton from TLC.
Yes.
Good morning, Senator. I have
Nice
Melanie
to see
Williams with me as well this morning.
And I see that you're masked since you're together, so.
And Alex Cassell from the Judicial Branch. Hey, Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Morning, everybody. Morning, Senator.
Good morning.
In addition to that, just so folks are aware, in addition to the senator, there's several members of the staff who are on. In addition to myself, Sarah Holmes is on, the Senator's State Director. Kevin Travellini is on, and he works these issue areas in the DC office as a legislative assistant. Alan Rodriguez, I see, is on the Senator's press team. I believe Mayor Lovett is on as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Good morning. Good morning. I like your background, Mayor.
Getting ready.
Yeah, good.
And just so folks are aware that there may be several members of the media who are on as well in listening mode. So, Senator, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, and did we introduce Ed? Ed Morris?
No, actually, Ed Collins is on.
Ed Morris,
Yes.
City
Ed
Manager.
Morris.
Hey, Ed, how are you? The city manager in Claremont. So, good
Yes.
morning.
Good morning, Senator. Thank you.
Good morning. Well, thank you all very much for being willing to join me virtually. As you can see, I'm still in Washington. We have some final votes over the weekend, but really appreciate your taking time to brief me. As I think many of you know, I am the ranking member, so the top Democrat on the Appropriations Subcommittee that has the Department of Justice in our portfolio. And so the grant that Sullivan County's received is one that we were very excited about, and I'm really anxious to hear how you all see it working and how you think that might change how we respond to people with substance use disorders and their families, because as I know you all know, because you've been there on the front lines, that when someone has a problem with substances, it's not just them, it's their whole family that's affected. And so this, I think, is a really exciting potential model to address that. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what you all have to say and to taking notes so that I can share this as we get back into appropriations discussions about what we should be funding. We have increased funding for family courts, almost doubled it in the time that I've been on the subcommittee, and I'm very proud of that and looking forward to what we need to do to ensure that you have the resources you need. So I'm going to stop there because we have limited time and I really want to hear from all of you. Thank you.
Yes. Well, Senator, when Judge Ashley and I were putting this together, we looked at the list of folks, and in order, I think, to make the best use of the time and going in a logical order of how this was developed, we came up with a sequence of individuals. So I'll start with Judge Ashley, Your Honor.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you again, Senator Shaheen, for giving us the opportunity to brief you on this really exciting development for New Hampshire. So of course, as you know, there have been drug courts in New Hampshire for for quite a long time, I was fortunate to be part of the team that started the first drug court in New Hampshire over in Stratford County back in 2005. And we have mental health court and we have a veterans treatment court, but we have never had a family treatment court in New Hampshire. And it's certainly been something we've been discussing for many years and waiting to have a good opportunity to start something like this up. That opportunity really came about last fall when we spoke with the folks in Superior Court. There is some dedicated funds for each county for drug court, adult drug courts. And for various reasons, Sullivan County was declining to use their dedicated funds. And so we decided to introduce legislation that would allow Circuit Court to utilize those funds for purposes of a family treatment court in Sullivan County. And it was very logical because there was such a need in Sullivan County. Certainly just by the bare statistics, Sullivan County has a higher percentage than its population of abuse and neglect cases, of termination of parental rights cases, of children born substance abuse exposed. So it was a good fit for the time. And so we proceeded along with that legislation. Interestingly, that legislation got lost in the pandemic. And so that didn't come to fruition. We'll probably start that again this year, but this grant came available and we put in an application for the grant, and I'll let Heather talk about that in just a moment, but I did want to distinguish the family treatment court from a drug court. It's really very different, as you certainly know, because you've been involved with these throughout the country, but it's a different event. It's not a crime that starts the issue. It's a child protection issue. It's a neglect or abuse of the child. The parties are different. It isn't a prosecutor and a defense lawyer. It is a DCYF attorney. It is a child social worker. And then there's a parent attorney. There's a guardian ad litem for the child. And of course, these are complex families. So there are multiple parents involved. And so it makes it certainly a challenging issue, but the goal is different, of course. It's not an alternative sentence for an individual. It is a way to achieve better outcomes for a child and the family of that child. So that is really the goal in a family treatment court, and that is through earlier access to substance abuse treatment and mental health services. So that's what we're really excited about starting in Sullivan County and the need for it there in Sullivan County. So I know we have limited time. I'm going to parlay over to Heather to really give you some information about what this grant involves for this county. Heather, you want to take it up?
Thank you.
Can't hear you, Heather. Oh. Try again.
Still can't hear you, Heather. Technology is great, except when it's not.
It's so true. It's so true.
Should we move on to the next while she's working on her audio?
So what we'll do is we'll move on to Judge Yazinski, because you can share your vision within your court, sir.
All right, thank you, Chris. And you turn it over to the least technologically capable person on this call. Senator, I have to start by a bit of a reminiscence and thanking you both personally on behalf of Sullivan County, the Claremont community. You have been committed to this county since the time you were in the state Senate, throughout the time you were a governor, throughout the time that you've been in the Senate. You have never forgotten Sullivan County. Through the years, you supported programming here that we needed. We were never just a part of a western rural New Hampshire that you didn't think about. And I have to mention our old late friend Dave Allison, who would have been delighted to know that this kind of a program is going forward. And it would come as no surprise to him that not only were you interested in it, but that you support us and you support Sullivan County. So thank you for that on behalf of all.
Thank you very much.
So this program is really exciting for me because in Sullivan County, I would say about 90% of our abuse and neglect cases involve a parent that has a problem with drug use, with substance use. This past week, each review that I did for my neglect cases had a parent that was involved with some form of a substance use disorder. In the past, the way that we have dealt with these cases is to try and piece together programming and services that would reunite the children with the parent. But what that often entailed would be me calling Aaron Barnett, my good friend, and saying, Aaron, I need you right now. We have these kids that you have to get in, despite the fact that she has no time and none of the providers that she works with has any time. TLC, poor Melanie Williams, one of our right hands in these cases, who has no time, they have no time, I would call them. The DCYF workers would try and piece together programming. But what we're going to be able to do now, as we go through the planning stages and ultimately implement this family treatment court, is have the services coordinated, have someone managing the case on a day-to-day basis, so that the parent who is going to be overwhelmed with the number of things that have to be done, we're going to have someone who's actually going to be able to be there for the parent, so that the parent, in these cases, if we cannot heal the parent, we can't reunite the child. We have to start with that. And sadly, in this part of the state, our service providers are always stretched very, very thin. Our families don't have consistency in their treatment because service providers come and go. We're going to be addressing those issues through this grant, and it will give me the opportunity, and I have learned this over my 20 years doing this, that the more often I see the parents, and the parents see that the court is supportive and really desiring to get the child reunited with the parent, the better the parent does. The better the parent does in treatment, the better their commitment is to healing. And we will be able to have that kind of wraparound programming that we haven't had. And it's interesting to see that Damian Fisher's on the line listening, and Damian lived in Claremont, was involved in Claremont for years, raised his huge family in Claremont, and he knows of the struggles that Sullivan County has had economically, but now with the opioid crisis, it has hit us hard, it has hit families hard, and now that I'm in my dotage as a judge, I am really thrilled to be able to be involved in this. So Heather, are you able to talk to us now?
Can I ask, and maybe Heather, you want to address this, but when you talk about those wraparound services and assigning someone to the person who is before the court who needs help, given the challenges with social service workers having a big caseload and not a lot of time, will you have to hire more people to address that wraparound service aspect of this, or how are you going to handle that? Because I know that's going to be a challenge. So Heather, maybe you were Judge Yazinski or Judge Ashley could address that.
Of course. Yeah, so family treatment courts offer a case manager within the court. So it's a court employee who does the coordination of the family treatment court, as well as doing case management for the people involved in treatment court. And they work with the treatment providers and other service providers. So treatment is not the only service that parents and children are connected to in a family treatment court. And that's one of the most robust reasons why family treatment court leads to better outcomes for everyone in the family, even if reunification is not appropriate for that family. because people often receive housing support services, which we know in Sullivan County, less than 1% occupancy rate means a really substantial need for housing. There's technology support. We included that in our grant proposal after COVID hit, that cell phones and access to other remote services would be made possible through the funds of this grant. So it's filtered through the judicial branch and through an employee that we will be hiring for the judicial branch to do this project coordination. But that project coordinator will then work with service providers. Now, part of the first year of the grant, we have this grant for 3 years, and the first year is a planning year. So in that planning year, we'll be working with the stakeholders, both locally and on the statewide level, to do some resource mapping to identify what resources and what services are currently available and where we need to do some boosting of those resources with some of the funding that the judicial branch is receiving. And so at the end of that first year, we'll be entering into contracts or MOUs with service providers to be dedicated to families and family treatment court. And that will solve some of the issues, or we hope it will solve some of the issues around the overuse of a lot of services, meaning that there are 3-month or 6-month waits to get in a lot of services. Because with the 12-month timeline of an abuse and neglect case, we really need people to get into those services right at the beginning, because they're not going to have time to make meaningful progress or complete a treatment program if they're not able to get in right at the beginning of an abuse and neglect case. We also know that's better for children, clearly, if parents and children are able to get in soon in the abuse and neglect case rather than at the 6-month or 9-month mark. So at the end of the first year, we'll be entering into MOUs. We'll develop a clear screening tool and protocol for referring cases into the family treatment court. The second year will be our first year of being up and running as a family treatment court. So we'll have a caseload. We'll be working with our screening tool so that every family who has an abuse and neglect case will be screened for appropriateness for family treatment court. And then our
And so what makes a family appropriate for treatment in the court, the family court?
Yeah, so the screening instruments available right now vary based on what the goal of that family treatment court is. Because our family treatment court goal is to get people into services as early as possible in the process, we'll develop a screening tool that checks off some of those boxes to make sure that we have services available for those families, and to make sure that they're ready to start some of those services right away. And I'm sure we'll be developing other criteria in that first year. That's part of the planning phase for us.
Great.
So second year we'll be up and running. We'll have our monitoring system in place. So one of the challenges is that all of these different systems that touch these families have different monitoring mechanisms to gather data. We'll have a centralized way to gather data about these families and the services being provided them. So we'll have some information that will really feed into our third year, which is an evaluation and development of best practices year. So we certainly want to think about whether or not expanding family treatment courts to other parts of the state is important and valuable and possible. And we know that some of these best practices that we'll learn can be added to criminal processes in which families are experiencing substance use, juvenile cases, divorce parenting cases where we know substance use is an issue. And so we'll be able to take best practices into other court processes, as well as other systems, child welfare, drug treatment, et cetera, that are more family informed and more trauma informed based on the children involved in these cases, and not just the specific substance use issue that the parent is facing. So that's really the goal of the 3 years of our grant. We're starting with this small pilot program in the hopes that this will make systemic change in New Hampshire in lots of different systems. So happy to answer any questions about the grant itself or provide any sections that might be helpful to you, Senator.
Thank you. And are you looking at models around the country to help inform the kinds of decisions you're making about criteria for who's appropriate for family court?
Absolutely. So there are almost 400 family treatment courts currently in existence around the country. New Hampshire is one of the last states to start a family treatment court, unfortunately. But that also means that we have some wonderful models out there that we'll be able to observe and learn from. There's also a consultant that comes with this grant. So the consultant will work with us. She's from an organization called Children and Family Futures, and she'll work with us, especially in this first year, to help us design protocols, that screening tool, get us connected with draft MOUs, et cetera. So we're very lucky to receive this grant and also receive the support that comes with the grant to be able to plan this well.
That's great.
Senator, can I should have brought up something else when I was speaking, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but this I think is something that's going to enhance what we're doing. Sullivan County is building a transitional housing unit. The Department of Corrections is building a transitional housing unit.
I understood that.
Yeah, right here in downtown Claremont, across the street from the treatment facilities that TLC has. And many of our parents, one of our parents, is in jail serving time for a drug-related offense or has drug issues. And Sullivan County is a very innovative treatment program in the House of Corrections. But we're now going to be able to carry this out into the community. And that I really think will work hand in hand to have parents residing so close to the court, having treatment at the transitional housing, but also being able to be part of this family treatment court. And the other thing along the lines of learning and looking at other courts, I have been in touch and involved and monitored other family treatment courts in New England. And there are lots of great examples out there. Of course, as you know, New Hampshire is unique in many, many ways. So we have great models, and some of the work that's been done by Judge Ashley and Ms. Culp has just been remarkable. I can't say enough. Heather wrote this grant in about 2 weeks' time. Just 24 hours a day, put it in, and we got it, and it's remarkable. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you. That's great. Congratulations.
And thank you, Heather. Let's move on to Joe Ripson from DCYF.
Great. Good morning, Senator. Again, good morning, everybody. Joe Ripson, Director at DCYF. For those who don't know, I've been here for a little less than 3 years now. Before that, I spent about a decade in New Jersey's child protection system. You know, we've had a lot of challenges with substance use, but really with the child protection system in general here for a little while now. And it's a system that, you know, the way that I think it was operating, you know, in 2016 and prior, and still in some ways today as we continue to build out and change our supports and services, that was, in my opinion, a little too reliant on family separation as a way to address issues like substance use. And other issues regarding child abuse and neglect, and didn't always have access to the type of treatment and peer supports necessary to help families support reunification. You can combine that with the challenge that you referenced, Senator, around caseworker caseloads that have been kind of an issue in New Hampshire, which again is another issue that's improving but not totally resolved yet. We've actually gone from, I think it was around an average caseload of 90 assessments per caseworker back in 2016 to an average of 17 today. So it's vastly improved, but the national target's 20. So we're not quite where we need to get, and we're still working on that. But some of the things that we have been able to do recently, what I think is really one of the most impactful things that we've done in the past couple of years was setting up what we call Strength to Succeed, which is a peer support program where we take parents who have previous involvement with the child protection system, previous involvement with substance use, and they engage as peers to support parents who are currently going through these challenges. And I've seen, you know, tremendous improvement in the way that we're able to work with folks and support reunification since we've done that. That's one important piece, but it's not the only piece of a comprehensive system to address substance use disorder within families. And I think what I'm really excited about with this grant is it's a way to align some of that work that's already happening in a way that the system as a whole can wrap around a family and move forward. So I'm really excited that, you know, what we're seeing here is kind of across government, across local communities, the ability of folks to kind of wrap around a common vision and a common approach to support families to try to hopefully prevent separation of families if you can in the first instance, and if not, try to really aggressively work to get those kids back with families as soon as possible, because that's always what's best. Every time you remove a child, it's traumatic. It might be the only thing you can do. It might be the best thing you can do, but it's always traumatic, and you always want to try to minimize that. So very, very excited, very grateful for the opportunity for DCYF to be working on this with all the wonderful folks here.
That's great, thank you. And is it hard to recruit peers to participate? I know in talking to peer recovery folks who are dealing with substance use disorders, that they talk about that as being one of the things that's helpful to them. Are you seeing that in this program as well?
Yeah, it's actually, you know, we've seen some really remarkable stories of folks who have come through the system and moved into these peer support roles, and they're then moving on even to other roles within the system. And I think Claremont's going to be experiencing that soon, but we'll find another great peer support person for Claremont as our Claremont peer support person is moving into another role with another organization to help support families within DCYF. But I think it's really opened up a door to a group of people who have a lot of experience and a lot of ability to help families move forward that historically were kind of kept out of the system. And now that they're able to be part of that system, they're able to help, you know, advance things in a way that we might not have thought about in the past, in a way that's a little more holistic and supportive.
So help change the system as well.
Absolutely. And perspectives, right? The way we think about families, all of it.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you for all the work you're doing at DCYF. Let's move on to Mark Rasala from CASA.
Senator, I've worked with the courts in Sullivan County for the past 25 years. When the opioid epidemic began, I started to see people develop substance use disorders who were unable to enter long-term recovery. Failed reunification of children with their parents was an outcome. Children experience neglect to extraordinary degrees, including trauma from the neglect and from the separation from their parents, siblings, and the homes that they lived in as a result of the substance use disorders. We see many infants and young children enter the foster care system for long lengths of time. Some of them lose the bond they had with their parents, and they latch onto the foster parents and bond with them. Increased contact between children and parents and reducing the need for long-term out-of-home placements through the use of an interdisciplinary team, as well as supports available through the community, will be essential for these families to experience healing. In order for families to be successful, they need access to substance use disorder treatment, therapy, employment, childcare, and housing, which can be beyond their grasp. Just in the past year, I've seen parents enter recovery, turn their lives around, and be reunited with their children. The correlation of that success is that comprehensive supports and services were available to them. Yet we know the level of supports and services needed are not available to all those in need. Senator, thank you for your support.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your great work for such a long period of time. And CASA does amazing work throughout New Hampshire. So I'm a big supporter of CASA.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Let's move on to Erin from Dartmouth-Hitchcock.
Hi, good morning. I'm a child psychologist. I've been working clinically and academically with families affected by trauma and toxic stress and substance use disorder at Dartmouth-Hitchcock, and at the local community mental health center, West Central Behavioral Health. And I actually moved to Claremont right before the 2008 recession and was caring for families in that Claremont clinic, watching that sort of devastate the community. And then, you know, witnessing the influx of pain pills and opioid addiction has been incredibly hard to watch. And I just want to speak for a minute. The science is very, very clear that people who are the most vulnerable to addictions are those who have had hardship and early trauma themselves, and mental health struggles, attachment disorders early on, and who are otherwise already disenfranchised. And people do what's only natural for humans to do when they're in despair, to feel better and to numb out emotional pain. And it's also been really obvious about how this has affected the children, as other people have spoken about. In my trainings to the community and to service members, I start calling it the battle of the oxys. So the high from the OxyContin is in direct battle and wins over the natural highs one gets from oxytocin when they're with their babies and children. So the attachment is really greatly impaired. And I recall running into Judge Jasinski, walking around town, seeing other friends and colleagues on this call as we were watching this devastation and sharing our heartaches and kind of saying, what are we going to do about this? Well, family treatment court is one answer. So it's one of those concepts where we ask, why weren't we doing this all along? And hopefully it disrupts the status quo by offering treatment and rehabilitation and compassion while holding people accountable. But also I think will help to reduce the shame and the stigma, which to me is what's key to lifting up communities and lifting up families, while ultimately promoting safe and unified families. So the model works by building this team of providers and supports, and we can regularly communicate with each other in the service of the parent's recovery and the parenting goals, and the safety and well-being of the children. And this means that the child and the adult service sectors and the mental health, child welfare, and courts, which have all traditionally been siloed, will be working together, which is innovative. And our Dartmouth Trauma Interventions research team has been promoting strategies and practices backed by science and research to try to help people understand and care for children and families with trauma and substance use for quite some time. And we have had several projects partnering with the wonderful people on this call. And we have one that's particularly going to be a great fit, I think, focused in Sullivan County and Grafton, bringing a model called specifically capital W wraparound, and we're going to study that model. So we're excited to partner. These are our children, our families. That's the only philosophy that can work, and we're happy to be here.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Let's move on to Sarah Blodgett. Sarah?
Good morning. Morning, Senator. I work with the Judicial Council. We're the state agency that reimburses parent attorneys for the representation in these cases. And since I started here a few years ago, I've had the chance to talk with many parent attorneys about their work. And the consistent message is how challenging it is to have a client with substance use disorder for all of the reasons that we know. But what the parent attorneys have said is that in so many of these cases, their clients end up having their parental rights terminated because regardless of what they've done, they're still struggling with ongoing substance use that has put their children at risk. And so that relationship is now over. As you've heard from other speakers this morning, these parents are often struggling with many other challenges in their life, such as mental health issues or housing instability, and they just don't have the supports necessary to be successful in recovery. It's very hard to focus on that issue when you don't have your basic daily human needs met. If you don't know if you're going to have a roof over your head one night, focusing on your own recovery just is not possible in those situations. And across the country, we have seen that families have better outcomes when family treatment courts are involved. Parent attorneys are really thrilled to have this opportunity coming to Sullivan County. In the next year, we will be working and learning about the role of parent attorneys in the family treatment court model. We'll be providing the attorneys here in New Hampshire with the resources and the tools they need to represent their clients in that setting, and it will certainly be new to them. It's not the adversarial court setting that they are used to, but we're committed to helping them understand why this works and why it's successful and what their role will be in it. This is an amazing opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I didn't realize the Judicial Council was that involved. So.
Thank you, Sarah. Very, very well put on that. Let's move on to Stephanie Slayton from TLC. Give us a little different perspective from the other side.
Thank you, Senator, for hosting us this morning. We're really excited to be here. I think TLC Family Resource Center is uniquely positioned to collaborate with all of the partners that we see here. We have both a peer recovery center and a family resource center under one roof. And the beauty of that has been that we provide a very family-centered, strengths-based program model that is community-based and can be long-term. So we know that addiction doesn't happen overnight, and similarly, recovery does not happen overnight and usually requires long-term supports and lots of different kinds of supports, so both formal and informal. And we've been able to blend those pieces together using evidence-based parenting programs, support groups. We have a parenting journey and recovery support group. We have moms in recovery groups. We do smart recovery at the jail for both female and male inmates. So I think that it's exciting for us to have this opportunity to work with yet another system, because we recognize that our on-the-ground work needs to be connected to the systems level work in our community. And this family treatment court is going to provide the space for us to do that in a really deliberate way with some solid planning behind it. And the collective data piece, as much as we all hate to spend time collecting data, we know that that can really inform the direction we go. And I think that having community level data is going to be phenomenal. A lot of the data that we have been collecting, you know, sort of goes up into this cloud at the state level, and it's very difficult to figure out if we're having an impact. So we're really looking forward to that piece. Melanie has been working in this space with our court system for a very long time, and I want her to have the opportunity to share a little bit about what that's looked like from her perspective as a mental health counselor.
Great, thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good morning, Senator. I've been here at TLC doing parenting education and also some child-parent psychotherapy with families for 15 years, and I live in the community, so I'm very in touch with the struggles that families face, and I have my own family, so I'm in touch with those struggles too. But I feel so excited about this opportunity. As everyone talks, I really feel like the families that we're going to be serving have some very complex challenges, as we've talked about, and have been through their own traumatic experiences, which place them really at risk. And it's difficult to overcome some of these challenges. But the way that we do that is through connections. And here at TLC, I know our staff are really good at making connections with people, and we'll continue to do that. And we'll also make connections with all of you on this call. I think there are amazing providers in this community, and working with the judge and having us all around one table with the parent kind of guiding the process is going to be so incredibly powerful, and I think really has the potential to make change in families' lives and in our community that nothing else can do. You know, if we're all working in our siloed areas, as Erin said, it's really hard to make change. But when we come together and help support families, I get goosebumps. It's such a powerful way to move forward, right? Because all of our efforts are coordinated, and we're listening to the parent, and we're hearing from them what's working and what's not working, and, you know, changing things as we go. And I think it's just so hopeful to me. And I think all of those connections that we have with each other and with the parent, they're going to trickle down into that connection with the child, and that attachment's going to grow. And hopefully we can build really powerful connections between parents and children. And I think it could be community changing. So I can't wait. I'm so excited.
That's wonderful. Can I ask, several of you have referenced the increasing challenges with substances as the result of COVID. Are you all seeing that at TLC? That, I mean, as I have looked at the data, we were making some positive progress in 18 and 19, and now I'm beginning to see some of the numbers creep back up in terms of overdoses and hospitalizations and all of that. Is that what you all are seeing as well?
We are definitely seeing that families are under tremendous stress at this time, even more so than they were pre-COVID. And, you know, as Erin said, when you're stressed and struggling, you're seeking some comfort. And if that's what you know, then that's what you go to. So we really want to help people to build other ways of feeling better and really put those concrete supports in place so that they are feeling better. And we're working hard to do that and working with community partners.
Thank you.
And in fact, our intake process, we've doubled the number of people we're serving at the recovery center in the last 6 months. And our recovery center was one of the first to open its doors because of that. We were really struggling to connect with our clients through the virtual platforms that we were trying to use. That's just not the most effective way to do recovery services because, as Melanie's saying, it's about connection. So our recovery center has been open since June, and we have doubled the number of people we are serving and need to add capacity. So this grant hopefully will help us do that.
Well, I can tell you we are working, I mean, who knows what's going to happen here with the appropriations process, but I saw Roy Blunt yesterday, who is the chairman of the subcommittee that deals with health and human services and most of the opioid programs and substance use programs. And I'm on that subcommittee as well. And he's been committed. And we talked about the fact that we can't forget, we got to keep funding what's been working, even with COVID, because we're seeing an increase now. So hopefully we can get something done that will ensure that there are resources still coming.
Thank
you.
you.
I can add one thing about your question of the impact of COVID on the opioid crisis. Many things that we find out are anecdotal until we realize years down the road that the anecdote became the rule. This year, in my court, we've only had 13 guardianship petitions. Usually it's a grandparent who is petitioning for guardianship of a grandchild. By this time, in any given year, we would normally have between 60 and 70. That decrease can only be attributed to the COVID lockdown, and it's very worrisome for a number of reasons. The abuse and neglect that might be going on is way under the radar now.
Right.
Contact that grandparents and teachers had with grandchildren, with children, doesn't exist any longer because of COVID. And it's very, very worrisome when that decrease in the petitions for guardianship really does worry me, because I think next year and the following year, we're going to see the end result of not having any interventions, not being aware of what has been going on. So I'm sorry to take up the time.
No, you're reinforcing something that I've heard from a lot of folks, and I agree, it's very troubling.
All right.
I might add too that connection is the antidote to addiction. So when we force a nation and into isolation, it's really, really hard.
Makes it worse.
Thanks. And I know we're running real short on time, but when this grant came out and we saw the word drug court, and this is how much I've actually learned about this program in the last several days, my first call was to Alex Cassell, because he's all things drug courts in New Hampshire. Obviously, and he was quick to tell me that this was not his program, that it was Heather's. But so Alex is the drug court coordinator for the state of New Hampshire, but I just wanted to give him an opportunity to share his thoughts with the senator on how this merges with his programs.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Senator, for always having the support of all of our treatment courts, our drug courts, our veteran courts, mental health courts, and now our family drug courts. So, to kind of echo what some of the things that have been said is that people recover, and it can be really miraculous, but they don't recover alone. They're usually recovering with their friends and family once they get sober. And so, this kind of goes right hand in hand with that. And so some of the lessons that we've learned from the drug courts is that, there are best practices, and those best practices need to be followed to ensure that the program is operating as efficiently as possible. However, knowing that New Hampshire is unique to other states, and not only that, but each location and jurisdiction is unique to one another, they can't all look exactly 100% identical. There has to be some room for them to be able to shift. And for example, with adult drug courts, in some locations we've contracted with the local community mental health center, and in some locations we've contracted with the local hospital, because each location has different resources at its disposal. And so you need to be able to have the ability to kind of shift things around and have it look a little differently, knowing that we're still following best practices, but it's not going to look exactly alike. The team dynamics is very important as well. To have a healthy functioning team is almost just as important to have a healthy functioning program, because if the team is not functioning well, then the program won't. So to keep the team functioning well is like a continual process of, you know, policy meetings and making sure everyone's on the same page, and that can be almost just as important. And then also with the drug court office, we have a number of trainings that we hold, and there will be training opportunities for this group and these individuals on seeking safety and, you know, brain injury due to overdose, and a number of other things that we have coming up in the next year or so. And then in addition to that, the adult drug courts do have a database, and we have one extra license that we will be able to, you know, give to the family drug court. So we'll be able to keep some of this data so that we can report in on it.
Oh, good.
Great, thanks, Alex. And before we close out, Ed Morris, the city manager from Claremont, actually reached out to the senator's office probably like 2 or 3 days ago, asking about this grant. So the timing of this was perfect. I know Mayor Lovett had to jump off to run to a meeting, but Ed, I'm not sure if you had any questions or just some quick comments before we close out.
No, it was just really good to learn a little bit more about this grant and what's happening. I know the city of Claremont's been working hard on the affordable housing issue and trying to work on that aspect of moving forward. And then the Claremont Police Department, and I did ask and bring on Chief Mark Chase here today. We've worked hard. We received a grant, a regional grant, working with an ACER coordinator. We were working on the child side of this when childhood ACEs happen, and it's just good to see this grant coming about, building a more robust system so all these different entities and organizations can work together to not only treat the children as we are working on, but the entire family. So thank you for this time to listen in, and I didn't know if Chief Chase wanted to add anything or not.
Sure, Chief, you want to give some closing remarks here?
I don't know if I have any really stellar closing remarks. I learned of this. This is exciting. The ACER grant we're working on or starting soon is going to be really important for the community, and I'm excited to see the benefits years down the road. And I know I spoke to you, the Senator, when we were at the child care center, that we're also concerned with, you know, with the centers not having as many children, not as many eyes seeing all these children that are possibly having ACEs and stuff. So I'm happy to learn about this today, and I'm excited to hear more information as it progresses. So, and working with the courts and all the people involved in this call. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for being willing to take time to brief me and members of our staff. I don't know, Sarah, if you were on from the beginning, but also on the call is Sarah Holmes, who's my state director. And I hope that as this grant is unfolding, if you have thoughts about what we ought to think about in the future in terms of funding, and any ideas about how we can be more creative, how we can be more supportive, I hope you will share those with Chris, with Sarah, with Kevin, with me. Let us know what's working. The sooner we have some sense of how you're feeling we should be responding, the better we can advocate as the appropriations process goes on and as things happen here. So please keep us informed. It's really exciting. I would love to come in and sit in on a session at some point if we ever get through the COVID phase where we can do that. But really very much, I'm very grateful for what all of you continue to do to make a difference for people in Sullivan County and for those families who are really struggling. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you all for joining. Take care.
Stay in touch.